for me personally, the way I move has completely changed. My name is Dan Halliday. I am an instructor and organizer with Liberty Sword Club in Jersey City, New Jersey. We mostly train out of Lincoln Park in Jersey City, but we'll train pretty more or less anywhere. I mainly teach and train in Liechtenauer's Kunstinspektions. It's kind of an all-inclusive medieval system that covers longsword, which is a long, single-edged, one-handed sword. It covers dagger, spear, fighting in armor, fighting out of armor. Kind of full spectrum art, and I train as much of that as I can possibly get my hands on. It also trains mounted fencing, which I haven't gotten to play with yet. Yeah, so around the end of 2014, the New York Times came out with this video that was titled "Inside the World of Longsword Fighting," and it was a piece covering an event from spring of 2014. And I finished watching it and immediately went, "This is a thing? Nobody told me this was a thing. Why did nobody tell me this was a thing?" And immediately looked up the nearest school to study it. There was a school just over the river. They were in Midtown, so I went and started training with them. They eventually moved uptown. They moved up to Harlem. At the end of the day, it just kind of got to be a little too far for me. I started thinking, well, I know a little bit, and I want to fence with people in Jersey City, and I don't want to go all the way up to Harlem to fence. So why don't we just start doing stuff here? And that kind of puts me where I'm at now. Loads of it. Loads of it. The kind of a hard pill to swallow there is that we can't ever know whether or not what we're doing is exactly what was being done in period. You know, we have isolated accounts of particular documented duels in which things are described as having happened in a certain way. There are some masters that have just a series of pictures. There's some masters that have a series of pictures with a little bit of text. There are others that have exhaustive and complete descriptions of their entire system written in excruciating detail. The art that I study is kind of a little column A, little column B. So there's this kind of constantly looming sense of well, I can't really know all the things that they were doing, and maybe there's some things that they were doing then that we're just not interested in doing now. You know, one thing that I am kind of a big proponent of is kind of taking the art and making it your own. In a lot of ways, they've got a lot of the same applications that any martial art is going to have as far as crossover into just kind of everyday life things. Proprioception, just knowing where your limbs are, sensitivity, feeling, just basic things. Feeling how much pressure there is coming from something, knowing where that pressure is coming from, knowing where that pressure is going. Sense of timing, kind of organizing where in any given action that you do sits in relation to actions around it in a temporal sense. All of these things are major components of Kunstinspektions. Yeah, for me personally, the way I move has completely changed over the last 6 years that I've been doing this. There's been a huge spike in online classes. People who normally wouldn't get to train with each other without going to an event together are doing classes, and even some of the events that were scheduled to happen turned into online-only events with seminars from a dozen different instructors doing just really cool stuff to a much larger audience than they would have otherwise been able to do in person. And so when lockdown orders started, I think there was 1 or 2 weeks where we just kind of went, all right, let's take a step back from things and figure out how we're going to do this. And kind of in the course of that, we started kind of joking about like, oh, haha, social distancing. Well, what if we just did spears? Wait a minute, what if we just did spears? So we had enough club funds together that I was able to just order a bunch of spear hafts and a bunch of spear tips, and we wound up with nice 7.5 foot long spears that we did like I think about a 6-week unit just training spears. And then after that we kind of moved forward a couple hundred years to Domingo Luis Rodinho. Is an Iberian master from the 17th century who has a couple of sections on case of swords, but specific case of swords is using 2 rapiers, but specifically in sort of crowd control, escorting, things to deal with kind of open space, dealing with multiple opponents, namely keeping people away from you. And so it's this really cool flowy style. It's kind of reminiscent of some Filipino martial arts in some of the movements. And that was another thing that we could all just work on form and movement fairly far away from each other, because part of the whole point of that is keeping people away from you. And after a while, we kind of started getting a little more comfortable with getting a little bit closer together, and we kind of resumed our regular longsword stuff. Always through all of this, always being masked up. But yeah, the longsword has all been mask on face, under fencing mask. And it's hard. You sweat, you breathe, the whole thing gets wet. It gets a lot harder for air to pass through, and it's a really annoying thing that I don't want it there, but also got to keep people safe.
Well, there you have it. Despite the difficulties of obscurity, reconstruction, and even a global pandemic, this group has managed to maintain their training and their art. I suppose it's in the spirit of it all. It's been kept alive for 700 years now. Why let a pandemic stop it? It survived the Black Plague, and people like the Liberty Sword Club help it to survive today.